The latest NBA rulebook is made up of 74 pages and over 36,000 words covering every single detail that goes into an official NBA game. But today, we've saved you the hassle of thumbing through it all, and we'll be breaking down some of the weirdest and craziest rules that you probably didn't even know existed, starting with the no shatter rule. If you ever thought to yourself, it's been a while since anyone broke a backboard in an NBA game, it turns out there's a very good reason for that. In response to the incredible strength and dunking prowess of Daryl Dawkins and Shaquille O'Neal, the league stepped in and made two significant changes to make backboard shattering a thing of the past. Beginning in the 1993-94 season, the league increased the brace of the basket support system and the stability of the actual backboard, making it significantly harder to break. And secondly, the league instituted the no shatter rule. Under this rule, if a dunker shatters the backboard, regardless of their intention, the basket doesn't count and the player gets a tech. As much fun as it can be to see the backboard shatter, this is one rule the league absolutely got right. After all, Shaq literally almost died when he famously tore down the hoop against the Nets the year before. Had he not ducked out of the way of a rapidly swinging shot clock, the Hall of Famer might not be with us today. And before you think we're overreacting, when speaking about this incident, Orlando Magic president Pat Williams, who was watching the game at home, said he's lucky he wasn't killed. Speaking of life or death situations, did you know the NBA has a plan in place in the event that more than 5 players on a team tragically die or are dismembered? The rule is known as the disaster draft and originated following a terrifying plane crash with the 1960 Minneapolis Lakers. On the way back from St. Louis, the Lakers team plane suffered a broken generator and needed to make an emergency crash landing onto a snowy Iowa cornfield. Miraculously, everyone survived and no one was hurt, but it forced the NBA to institute a plan just in case something like this ever happens again. If the disaster draft is triggered, the league would hold an emergency draft on behalf of the affected team, and that team would draft players from other clubs to fill out their roster. The disaster draft functions similarly to an expansion draft in that the drafting team can only select one player per team, and the non-affected teams can protect a certain number of players. But unlike the 2004 expansion where teams could protect 8 players, during a disaster draft, teams may only protect 5. The disaster draft team must remain cap compliant, and lastly, they automatically receive the number 1 pick in the following year's draft. Thankfully, the NBA has never held a disaster draft, but it's important to be prepared for anything. You probably know each NBA team gets 7 timeouts to use in a game, but you may not know there are multiple rules in place that force teams to use them. According to the rule book, a team must use a minimum of 4 of their timeouts because TV networks need to guarantee their advertisers a certain number of commercial spots. However, teams must also save at least 1 timeout for the 4th quarter, but are not permitted to use more than 4. So what happens if the coaches don't take a timeout? Well, if neither team has elected to use a timeout before the 6:59 mark of the quarter, the official scorer will go take a timeout at the first dead ball and charge it to the home team. If no additional timeouts are called before the 2:59 mark, the scorer will once again initiate a timeout, and this time it gets charged to the team that hadn't been previously charged. So if you ever noticed a coach take a timeout that seemed out of place or otherwise nonsensical, there's a solid chance they were just staying compliant with the rules. Another part of the game that is heavily regulated is the player's uniform, starting with the actual jersey numbers. For instance, a player may wear the number 0 like Dame or 00 like Jordan Clarkson, but a team can't have both numbers on the same team. This rule is in place to help scorekeepers and refs from making mistakes and is definitely understandable. But that's not their only rule around jersey numbers. While it's not written down anywhere, no NBA player has ever worn the number 69. While we can all guess why that's the case, it's not for a lack of trying. Dennis Rodman allegedly requested to wear the number when he was a Dallas Maverick, but had to settle for the number 70. But even more important than jersey numbers, to the league anyways, is the use of non-sanctioned logos, and that policy isn't limited to just jerseys. The NBA enforces this rule on accessories, tattoos, and even haircuts. Some of the more notable infractions include Kelly Oubre's Supreme arm sleeve, Iman Shumpert's Adidas logo haircut, and perhaps most famously, Lonzo Ball and J.R. Smith's Big Baller brand and Supreme logo tattoos, respectively. Neither tattoo stood a chance, and both players were forced to cover them up when on the court, although Lonzo eventually had his permanently covered up with a pair of dice. The NBA also has a surprising amount of rules when it comes to headbands. For starters, the widely popular ninja-styled headbands that were everywhere in the 2018-19 season were officially banned ahead of the following year as they pose a risk to player safety. Now, as for traditional headbands, which are pretty common, the NBA has a rule that said headbands can only be worn with the NBA logo visible and in proper orientation. Once upon a time, guys like Rajon Rondo and Rasheed Wallace tried to mix it up by wearing their headbands upside down or inside out, respectively, but the NBA seemingly felt so strong about it that they put a rule in place to prevent it from ever happening again. Nowadays, the only player who the rule seemingly doesn't apply to is Alex Caruso, but no one is quite sure how he manages to pull that off. If you know why, let us know in the comments below or at us on Twitter. Closing out the list, we have the bounce shot rule. While it's never been officially recorded in an NBA game, you might be surprised to learn that it is legally allowed to score on a bounce shot. The rule states a legal field goal or free throw attempt shall be scored when a ball from the playing area enters the basket from above and remains in or passed through the net. But of course, there are a few stipulations with this particular maneuver. If the bounce shot is taken at the end of the half or end of the game, the ball must already be in the air when the buzzer sounds and go in the hoop before touching the ground again. If the ball is bounced after the buzzer sounds or hits the ground after its first pre-buzzer bounce, it is considered a dead ball and the basket will not count. Thanks for watching. Of course, be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you're new. We're currently dropping 2 videos a week that you're not going to want to miss out on. But right now, only about 1% of our audience is currently subscribed, so hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay up to date on all things basketball.